I don't feel alone. We just settled in and it already feels like home.
You're listening to the Feels Like Home podcast with Mike Throne and Marty Ford.
Hey everybody, it's Mike. One of the things that we love to do with the podcast is introduce you to people that and places and businesses that you might not know. And we have another one of those for you this week. Colin and Sarah Rose are the owners and operators of Objective Reality Games. It's located in Zane Plaza, just off of Bridge Street here in Chillicothe, and it is a VR arcade and virtual escape room. But it's much, much more than that. And Colin's going to get into that story a little bit about how they've now operated a virtual reality classroom for which is in testing for Bishop Flaget. They're developing their own game, VR game, through a studio, and they've just got amazing things going on in a little space on Bridge Street. And I love Colin and Sarah. They're great, young, enthusiastic business owners that have really taken an idea a long way in a couple of years. And Sarah, unfortunately, couldn't join us tonight, but Colin is here, so we're going to have some fun with Colin and talk. It's also a really revealing conversation about what got him into the VR space to begin with and why it's a business and it's really important to him. And so we think you're going to really love this, and we invite you to check it out, share it wherever you can, because I think it's got a great story behind it. So here's Colin Rose from Objective Reality Games. Well, really excited this week to have Colin Rose on. And so when I met Colin was through the chamber. He had started Objective Reality Games 2019, like fall of 2019, right?
Yep, fall 2019.
But Objective Reality Games has blossomed and grown into a lot more. So it's one, great that we're having you on today for that story alone. But kind of tell everybody who you are. Of course, you own this with your wife, Sarah. And then what Objective Reality Games is, and then we'll kind of, get into everything else.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Colin Rose. I from Chillicothe, CHS graduate from 2002. Like Mike mentioned, we opened Objective Reality in October of 2019. So we got all of October, November, December, January, and February, and then the pandemic hit, obviously, and kind of put everything on hold. But we got lucky because the way that VR works, if you're not familiar, is you put on the virtual reality headset and then you have to have about 10 feet of personal space to really interact with your virtual environment. So when you come in, you put the headset on, you get two hand controls, which become your virtual hands, essentially. And then, you have this 10 feet of space. So, once restrictions started to get lifted and it came time for businesses to reopen, it wasn't such a hard sell for us to go to the health department and say, we'll keep people safe because we've already got these social distancing guidelines. The headsets have, the ability to be sterilized, and we can take out the foam insert that touches the face and replace it with a new one for each person, and all these different things that we kind of already did just for sanitary purposes. But we, like I said, we got lucky because a lot of businesses didn't really get to open up like we did right off the bat. So, but yeah, we're a virtual reality escape room and arcade. We have 5 different escape rooms now, 3 of which are Ubisoft, and they're in the Assassin's Creed world, if you're familiar with that game franchise. So the first one, you're stuck in this pyramid in ancient Egypt, based off of Assassin's Creed Origins, and you're just trying to figure out how to get out, you and your friends. It's a 4-player experience, so you'd come in with 3 other friends, or just a 2-person works as well, but yeah, and then there's, like I said, there's 2 more in that series, and then we just got a deal worked out with a French developer called Encarna, and the developer of that is actually a Cirque du Soleil person in France. So the games are very fantastical and colorful, and they're also a really cool experience. And I think that the puzzles are a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult, but they're a little harder to figure out, I think, than the Ubisoft stuff is. But then we're also an arcade as well. We have...
Which is where I live. That's where I live, is in the arcade.
Mike's done them, yeah.
My son and my son Walker and I have done this. I don't know if I told you this or not. We finally got to the end of Arizona Sunshine.
Oh, did you?
So Arizona Sunshine is basically a zombie apocalypse type of game. You walk through it. You could walk through it by yourself, but my son and I do it together. I don't want anybody to make any judgments on me taking a 10-year-old in to do zombie shoot 'em up games, but it was a blast.
It's pretty cartoony, so I mean it's not super gory.
Yeah,
but it's really fun. That I think is by far the most popular game we have.
Yeah,
because you can do that by yourself. You can do it with up to 4 friends, and it's a really fun time because it's kind of storyline driven, where it's Walking Dead like, where you've got the reason why you're searching through these different places, and super fun. But yeah, we have about 50 different games. A lot of them are multiplayer, so a lot of different options.
Yeah, the laser tag is really cool too.
Laser tag is really cool. Yeah,
I'm horrible at it, but I like it a lot. So
a lot of stuff. So people have Quest at their homes a lot of times anymore, but a lot of stuff is games you can't get at home, and really the draw for me in the VR arcade is that you can come out with your friends and all play together, which not everybody has a headset at their house, so kind of lets people get all together and gives you a reason to come out,
And VR is like it's a $1 billion business. I mean, I saw some numbers that said that it's like a $5 billion business now, but they project upwards of some projections say $92 billion by 2027. I think the pandemic, the one that I saw said it would probably be a $12 billion business by 24, but they've revised that down from like 15 or 14. So like, I mean, it's a huge business, not only in America but across the world, because you can play these games, against people regardless of where you physically are. So.
Right. Yeah. It really lets you interact with people in a real way that aren't, in your house. You can really have these, and VR has a way of tricking your senses into feeling like you're really in these environments. So that's. I mean, you're right on. I think that. Well, for instance, we work with Bishop Flaget to make a virtual reality classroom. And reason being, you can get into the VR headset and you can essentially become back, you're back in class, basically.
Right.
You can kind of separate your personal life from your school life and really kind of get in a mindset for learning. And we're still kind of testing that, but it really does kind of make you feel like you're in these virtual environments.
And I know, like in the 10 TV story, the Bishop Flaget principal basically said that, this was kind of developed for the pandemic, but now the pandemic has subsided. We also don't know what's ahead. So if something else comes about, or if maybe there's a kid that can't really learn outside of the classroom, but they have a necessity to be outside the classroom, they can still be in an environment and a mindset, like you mentioned, that can help them learn. Because it's hard to do it when you're looking at a screen only sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was. I think, I graduated college in 2009, so things have changed a little bit since then. But even then, trying to do online learning, my brain doesn't work like that. I have to be in a classroom. I have to be able to separate myself and really kind of be in a learning mindset, and it's really tough to do that sitting at your kitchen table.
But then you can throw the headsets on and be in the kitchen, yet really be someplace else.
Yeah.
And do you feel like people are getting more and more comfortable with VR? I mean, I tried VR a long time ago, and then what I've tried now it's not even close in comparison. So how have those improvements in VR affected your business? And what you guys are doing?
Well, I think that with the Quest 2 being, I think, the most purchased gaming device of 2020, it really got people to understand VR better, because we would get people that came into our shop and said, I've done VR, it makes me sick. And then I would push them to get some more out of them, and they'd say, well, I did the one where you put your phone in the cardboard, and I got on a roller coaster and I got sick. And I always tell them, like, well, that's your cell phone. That's not a VR headset. You know, VR headsets, they're designed to refresh at a faster rate so that it moves naturally with your head movement. Because if your phone's in a piece of cardboard, it doesn't have, I think it refreshes at either 70 or 90 hertz typically. And that just means the number of pictures that your phone creates. And at that rate, if you turn your head left or right, you get a little bit of lag between what you're actually moving and what the screen does. And that causes vertigo, it causes nausea. So the Quest was the first headset to come out with 120 hertz refresh rate, which is comparable to what we have in the high-end $1,500, $1,600 headsets that we use in our store. So people can really appreciate VR now at home, and then they come in the store and they're like, oh, I know what VR is and I like it, you know. And before it was a little bit more of a sell to say, well, just try it out. You know, now people come in, they know what it is, they're excited about it.
My biggest struggle is that I gotta remember to put my contacts in instead of wearing my glasses, because the glasses, even though you guys accommodate that really, really well, it's still a little bit of a chore. You know, I kind of feel like they're right next to your face. It gets a little bit of a struggle, but I mean, I just am continually impressed by the quality of the headsets and even the sound that's in your games. Like, to me, it just feels like, you're right, like when we play Arizona Sunshine, I start sweating, you know, because I just like, it's kind of intense, you know. Yeah, I mean, those headsets we use, they're a little pricey, but they have directional audio, so it sounds like something is behind you over here or upstairs or downstairs. And the screens are just a higher quality. They actually have actuators in them that move the screens based on the way you're looking at them, and it tracks your eye movement and increases the image quality where you're actually looking at on the screens. So a little more high tech than the Quest, but yeah, I mean, it's a super cool experience. And you know, the Ubisoft Escape games and some of these developers are really taking advantage of all those different immersive qualities of VR and making things that are super, you know, just kind of takes you out of reality for a minute, and then when you take the headset off, you're like, whoa, where am I at? You know. so in terms of the gaming experience, before we get on to some of the classroom and some of the stuff that you've done, but do you see yourself and do you see objective reality games branching into suits and things like that even deliver a higher end experience in that way? As I read about VR, I read about these places that are doing these types of things, and to me it seems like something out of a sci-fi film from 1987. But this is reality now, you know? It really is. You know, we're actually, if you've been to our shop recently, we have, they're called omnidirectional treadmills. And it's a technology that's still kind of in early testing. We linked up with a company out of Shanghai, China, that's making a more cost-effective model, kind of consumer model that's compatible with PSVR, Oculus, Vive, all the different headsets. But it's a trackpad that you wear, these slippery-soled shoes. You strap in at the waist, and if you've seen Ready Player One, it's essentially that. You know, you strap in at the waist, you put your headset on, and you just walk around like you would in normal everyday life, and it translates your movement into VR, so you can walk anywhere, you know, in VR without actually leaving this treadmill.
Right.
You know, and initially it does feel a little weird walking like that, but after you've been in there for 10 or 15 minutes, it really does kind of feel like natural walking. You can get your normal gait in and really feel like you're just walking around these environments. And I think that, coupled with those haptic feedback suits you were talking about, you know, they're even coming out with technology now where you can not even have controllers. You can use your hands and it'll track your hand movements, so you can physically just pick up weapons and I think there's a lot of cool places VR is going to go in the near future, and it all just kind of hinges on computer technology being able to render more, and they're coming out with better graphics cards all the time. So I think it's just a matter of time before we're able to have those realistic experiences.
Being an '80s kid, I grew up in the arcade, and then they disappeared for a number of years. Do you think VR is what has brought the arcade back? Because I see them popping up.
Yeah, I think it has, and I think honestly, sad to say, I think it'll go the way of the '80s arcade eventually. Because the reason why the arcades of the '80s did so well is because people couldn't afford these $4,000 and $5,000 arcade machines at their house, and then the console came out and kind of did away with the arcades of the '80s. And I think that once VR technology in the form that we have in the arcade is easily available to anybody, I think that the VR arcade will go the same way. I think we still have plenty of time before that happens, but I think it is a resurgence of the arcade of the '80s for sure. Yeah.
So my question would be then, how did you get into? How do you go from? I imagine you were a gaming enthusiast. You liked to play games, whether it was Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. So do you start out playing these games, then you kind of learn about VR, and then how does that go to taking a leap to starting an arcade?
Yeah. So, I guess that'd be a good point to just kind of get into my whole backstory, right?
Okay.
I was born in '84, so I was an '80s kid too, and grew up on the Nintendo and kind of gamed my whole life. World of Warcraft, Diablo, all that stuff, and then I went off to the military right out of high school. 37 Fox, PSYOP, Army for a number of years, and then got out of the military. Got my degree from Ohio University in hospital administration. Never worked a day in a hospital. And kind of right from that, I went to working at UPS. They were the first company to hire me. I was a manager at UPS for a number of years. And then, kind of trying to progress my career, I looked for other corporate-style jobs and ended up in Columbus, kind of working in finance. And I was over a period of time, I got hired on with Chase, and they kind of pushed me to get my Series 7 license, which I ended up doing, passing the Series 7 exam, and became a broker for them. And then, I during my time in Columbus, I found addiction, like a lot of people do, and it kind of took over my life, and moved back to Chillicothe, thinking I could run away from it, and that's not how it works, And so it followed me, and I got worse into addiction until that was the only thing that really mattered. And came a point in my life where I was driving, and I had used some substances and fell asleep, and the police officer found me, and I was charged with having controlled substances, which put me through the court system. And I grew up here, so I know most of the judges and people in the community. And Judge Nussbaum was a friend, or his son was a friend of mine, and it was just a real big wake-up call for me, And so I went through rehab, and when you go through these court proceedings and you get in trouble with things like that, you lose pretty much everything. I was through my rehab time and all of that. I did, I think, 7 months behind some kind of confinement. So, you lose. I lost my house, lost my car, lost just about everything there was to lose. But through that time, I was able to kind of figure out who I was too, and coming out of that, you realize that, for me personally, I didn't know how to have fun without alcohol. My weekend, if I wasn't going to the bar, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I kind of had to relearn how to have fun. And a lot of that came to gaming, kind of reconnecting with my childhood in a way.
Right.
So, we started going to board gaming groups and different things like that as a way to meet like-minded people, and went to like a Comic-Con style event back in 2018, and met the guy from Ubisoft who is promoting these VR escape rooms, and it was new to the US at that time. They didn't have anybody doing it. It was big in Europe. Europe was kind of an early adopter to VR technology, so a lot of this stuff really thrives in Europe, and a lot of what we see in the US kind of comes after it's been fleshed out in Europe. So he was at this Comic-Con thing, and I tried it and got to talking to the guy, and because I've loved the Assassin's Creed series as long as it's been out. It's just a really, really cool concept. And so, he said, I'm looking for somebody in the U.S. that wants to open one of these VR arcades like they have in Europe, and, just want somebody that can help push this content in the U.S. And I was like, well, that would be such a cool idea. And, being a veteran and different things that I did have going for me, luckily, we were able to secure funding. And that kind of birthed the VR arcade. We got to work with this awesome company out of Columbus called the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, and they gave us our business loan, and about 4 months later, just my wife and I and some lumber put the place together. So it's been just kind of me and her doing it ever since.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that backstory. I think it's number one. I think it's a great way to let people know that there's hope beyond what the addiction does to people.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's a really powerful way to look at that. But it is an important part of your backstory, which is really, cool. And I know that you're a peer counselor now. We met each other way after that, I think, or a few years after that, probably.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years, yeah.
And I think, so, I kind of knew of that part of your story, but not to the depth that you talked about today. So I'm really pleased that you shared that with us. But I love that your search for VR, basically, or to create the arcade, basically comes out of I got to find a new way to live.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there that do need that and do need to find a new way to live,
Yeah,
so,
well, you'd be surprised, just from running the arcade, how many people come out, and maybe you're not dealing with drug addiction yourself, but I guarantee somebody that is.
Yeah.
And a big part of what I do as a peer supporter, and just, me in general, is I tell this story a lot to a lot of different people, and it is to kind of show them there's light after addiction, but really we're trying to destigmatize, I guess, the word addict, and just show people that it doesn't mean that your life's over.
Right.
Yep.
So,
and some of that also comes down to sort of destigmatizing gaming as well. We talked about this with Matthew Benson when we had him on from eFuse, about how, like, it used to be when I was a kid, well, why are you wasting your time on all these video games? And now people are getting full ride college scholarships to the greatest universities in the country to play, Rocket League.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like, honestly, I think whatever helps people battle the demon, as long as it's fruitful for you and for the community at large, I'm all for it, and I think that's what you're doing, is you're providing that safe space, which is great.
Yeah, and we do community outreach, we do sober support activities for the drug court, for community action, and these different agencies. We try to help out youth that might be at risk of going into addiction, and we really want to be like you said, a sober, safe space for people to kind of come out and have fun.
Yeah.
I think part of the beauty of your story is that the business or the arcade was part of your healing, right, and part of your recovery. And that's the beautiful piece that I think you get to share with people in your story, is, like you said, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like there is something after addiction, and thank you for sharing. That's wonderful.
Oh, no problem. Yeah.
And then, so the VR arcade then births from that. The Objective Reality Studio, which I think you started last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, we started that mid-pandemic, right about March of 2020 is when we started thinking about doing it. And that kind of came from, we were shut down. We didn't have anything to do with our PCs, and we didn't, really know where this pandemic was going to go. So we started, looking for other options. And I'd always, as we've talked about, been super into gaming. And so, I reached out to Ohio State and I said, hey, I own a VR gaming arcade here in Chillicothe, Ohio. We have about $60,000 worth of gaming PCs in here. I'd love to use them to make some games. And, being that my degree's in business, essentially, I don't know the first thing about making a game. But the guy at Ohio State was interested because, college students at the same time really didn't have anything to do either. So he linked me up with a super talented programmer that was in his master's degree program up there, and he's since graduated, and he works for me full time now. And then I reached out to Kent State because Ohio State has a great programming department. Shawnee State has a great graphic arts program and gaming program in general. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to Shawnee State, and they linked me up with some really talented graphic artists. One of which is a character modeler for Bethesda right now, which is the people behind, Treyarch, which is the people behind the Call of Duty franchise. Mm-hmm. So one of our character modelers is the one making the characters for the Call of Duty series. So we're pretty excited about that. And then we, through Kent State, we got in touch with another one of our team, Frances. She's our level designer, so she's the one that's kind of behind the scenes, making sure that the game flows properly, that the storyline makes sense, throughout the whole game, and making sure that the puzzles, interact the way they're supposed to, and things like that. So that all kind of came from those conversations and email from me and a couple of the different universities here locally, and so we started working on the video game, and kind of organically through that, being that we are here in the community and we have people coming out to our shop all the time. We had the principal from Bishop Flaget came out, and we started talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a VR solution for the at-home students that lets them kind of get into class essentially from their house? And, we started kicking that idea around and put together a VR classroom that we were able to actually take up to Bishop Flaget, and had a couple of students get into the headsets and kind of do school in their headsets. They were able to take a test and watch their lecture kind of in this virtual classroom. And, like you said, the pandemic kind of ended, but, there's still application for that, I think. And we're kind of tweaking that in a way now for a government contract that we're bidding, which I mentioned earlier. We are... tomorrow I'm actually submitting it, but it's a augmented reality trauma training simulator for combat medics through the Department of Defense. So we're working on a way to, and this is all kind of new ground, because we're going to be using the HoloLens, which is kind of an augmented reality headset, a little different than the VR headset. You're not actually looking at LCD screens in front of your face. You're looking through glasses, essentially, but there's prisms built into the headset kind of above the glasses that project VR images kind of overlaid over top of your reality, which is what becomes augmented reality. And we're gonna, hopefully, if they accept our bid, we're gonna design this training simulator where the medics can look down at the table and see a gunshot victim, and just in augmented reality kind of suture it up and fix them up. And so it's exciting. It's a really cool space to be in because it's all new.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I love about it is it's, you know, it's not like you're following some procedure that's been done 100 times. We're inventing new things all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and
you wanted to also be in kind of the law enforcement space, right, with training and things like that. So not only simulations of high pressure situations, but even other types of training that you could do through VR as well, too, right?
Right. Yeah, we're actually we've been in talks here locally anyway about trying to make a de-escalation type simulation that well, here locally it was to hopefully train jail staff on how to interact with people that, you know, might have mental health issues or be under addiction, you know, and try to handle things in a way that de-escalates instead of escalates a situation. So we've been working with different mental health professionals here in town to try to first and foremost come up with the kind of procedure for dealing with something like that, and then how do we translate that into VR. You know, we have a VR camera that we want to, you know, kind of record these interactions with actors, and then have a few different ways that the confrontation can go, and have voice activated control that, you know, the person in the headset says one thing, it might lead to this scenario. If they say this thing, it would lead the other direction. So that's kind of the direction we're looking into right now as far as that project goes. But you know, we got a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
So
And one of those things that's going on right now, too, is that in September you're looking to release your first game from the studio.
Yeah.
Deed of Deception, I believe is the name of it.
Deed of Deception.
So tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, this team that you've been talking about, they've been working pretty hard on that game. But tell us what that's all about and where people might be able to find it and so on.
So the Deed of Deception, it starts out that you're brought to this mansion under the premise that your relative has died, deceased, and he's leaving his inheritance to whoever can find the deed within the house. So it starts out as a multiplayer cooperative experience in VR. And then, you know, you're solving puzzles, you're searching the house, you're finding different items and little pieces of lore. You know, it might be magazine clippings or pictures and different things that kind of explains the storyline a little bit. And then you find the deed and you realize that there is no money to be won, that the house is haunted, and that whoever found the deed is now possessed by the house with the goal of killing everybody else that's in the house. And what makes it interesting to us and different people in the industry is that it changes, the gameplay changes via these different haunts. So as the person is possessed, they get different abilities, and the abilities change, you know, based on the situation. So in the two that we've coded so far, the first one, the possessed player catches on fire, and then he's able to kind of light fire to the house in different places, and he can set down traps. And as people walk on these traps, they get stuck, and then they get burned up in these rooms, and the other players are trying to scramble to save their friend before the fire consumes them. And then, you know, in another scenario, if you grab the deed and the player becomes possessed, he's now able to kind of Medusa style freeze people in stone. And then the other players are trying to find this light source that is from another dimension that can kill him. So you know, the house has also been coded in a way that each time you play the game, it'll lay out differently. So, you know, it'll be a different layout each time you play the game. So, you know, we wanted to essentially make a VR escape game in a sense that was replayable, that you could, you know, because with the escape games that we have in the arcade now, it's once you've played through it, you know how it ends, and that's you're not going to play it again unless you want to get a better score. But
right.
but yeah, we wanted to offer something that could, have limitless replayability, So
And so where will that be available? Like, that's strictly a VR game, right? So you could either use it with your headset if you own one yourself, or you go to an arcade to play that, or
yep, we're gonna have an arcade version that will be obviously for VR arcade use, and then
obviously an objective reality games,
right? Yep. We also plan to have we have it on Steam right now as well, so you can actually pre-order it on Steam right now, and then it's going to be on Oculus Store hopefully soon. That's a different process. We have to kind of pitch Oculus and they have to approve it. Similar to what we did with Steam, we've already gone through those steps with Steam. We just need to go through that with Oculus. But we want to have it on the Oculus as well because everybody has one at their house now, so it's a market that we want to capture.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So when you look at the studio really is kind of going, I mean, obviously you're running a VR arcade, but not only can you create games through the studio to use in your arcade and to see how things get executed in real gameplay, right? But I mean, it's obviously, it's kind of diversifying your revenue sources at that point, right? The making and selling of games helps you give revenue that if, arcade, that like we talked about this day 20 years from now when VR arcades go away, studios can live forever, really.
Exactly, yeah. That's always kind of been the reason behind it. Like we said, the arcade industry I think has a finite amount of time before it's obsolete. You know, hopefully that's not tomorrow, but
we almost thought it was last year, didn't we?
Right, yeah. But the studio, between VR simulation training for different departments and different government organizations, and there's so many different applications for VR that we're just kind of now discovering. I think that the future of VR is really exciting.
Yeah.
And from the military's perspective and the government in general, you can save a lot of money by simulating these things in the virtual space than going out and blowing things up and jumping out of airplanes and things that you can safely do in VR. Why not do it that way and save some money?
Yeah.
So.
And you can train people in California the same way you train them in Minnesota or South Carolina or Texas.
Well, and that was one of the things that's in this proposal that I'm putting up tomorrow is they wanted to be able to have medics in California jump in and do training with people in Michigan, and and that can happen in VR. That can't happen in real life.
Yeah, unless you're flying people.
Exactly.
At a great expense at that point too.
Yeah.
So it's really helping increase efficiency and cost savings and things like that.
Yeah.
So. And then you also, when I bumped into you last week, which was kind of happenstance, but it was neat. You talked to me a little bit about an app, I believe, that you're developing, or there's a contest, I think. You could probably explain it better than I can.
Sure, So we were approached a few months ago now to be the regional coordinator for NASA Space Apps because we're in the tech space, we're in the VR, production world. So they reached out and said, hey, we're looking for motivated, talented people to help us in this project that we're putting. I guess they do it every year. It's called the NASA Space Apps Challenge. So we were awarded the role of regional coordinator. So Objective Reality is now the coordinator for the Southwest region of Ohio, and it's my job, once they've announced what the challenge is for this year, to coordinate with colleges and different people in the community to try to build a team of people that are just excited about working on these big global issues. Like, for instance, last year one of the topics was empathy. Essentially, they wanted to get people to understand different walks of life in different countries, and what one team created was a VR experience where you could put on the headset and be in Shanghai, or you could be and kind of take a day in the life of these different cultures. And kind of understand where people come from, you know. So, like I said, they haven't announced the challenges for this year yet, but it's going to be something that's you know, something facing everybody, and it's a global kind of issue, and it's super exciting to be a part of it, you know, and I'm excited to see what we put together, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting that NASA's involved in that. Like,
yeah,
that the theme was empathy to help people better understand other cultures, right?
Right.
And that they recognize that the problem that we have is a lot of times people never traveled. I mean, you really learn about a culture when you find yourself submerged in it. And so what a great use of VR is to help people like travel to places that they may never have a chance to travel to. And that's an amazing education opportunity.
Yeah.
So.
And like you said, I've traveled obviously in the military, so I've seen a lot of different cultures that most people don't get to experience, and that's so true. You don't realize, you know, how, I don't want to say how good you have it in the US, but you don't realize where other people are coming from, you know, and having that perspective really changes the way that you look at things. So.
Yeah. I think it's important. I mean, I think getting to travel and see other cultures is important for everyone to have that opportunity. But we know that the way the world works, that not everybody has that chance.
Right.
I mean, I know the little bit of travel. I went to Europe, Germany, Switzerland, France. In my oldest daughter went to Kenya, and I know how just that experience changed her forever. Her perspective, how she feels about other cultures, how she feels about other people, her acceptance of things. It really is incredible. And I'm not sure that I would have ever thought VR could play an important role in being able to do that, but it now makes perfect sense. Because VR has gotten so good.
Yeah, I mean,
realistic.
It really does. You said you've done VR semi recently.
Yeah, well, so. Listen, man, I can get trapped in Beat Saber really easy. Like, what an addicting game. Like, I'm a music guy. I love music. I love rhythm. And so, like, I was one of those that I was the adult playing, you know, Guitar Hero and Band Hero. And it was because of, like, I love rhythm games. Yeah. And so, man, that was my first, like, real good VR was playing Beat Saber. And I was like, man, okay, where can I buy one of these? Because I want to do this all the time. Yeah, it was fun.
It's so immersive, though. VR it really does have a way of transporting you and just kind of putting you in these places that you couldn't, you know, go see normally.
Yeah, that's what surprised me about it. I didn't think, like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to realize, I know where I'm at. I'm wearing a headset. But, man, how quickly your mind forgets that and you find yourself in that space is pretty impressive. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you see the emergence? I mean, obviously we live in a place that isn't heavy into 5G right now, but do you see 5G as changing VR? Does that make it better on a mobile scale, maybe more than anything else? Or, you know, how do you see that influencing VR moving forward?
I think the biggest thing 5G is going to do for the VR industry is that you're going to be able to link your headset to, so like the Oculus Quest 2 is essentially a cell phone processor inside a headset. There's no computer attached to it. It can process what that headset can allow it to process. So 5G will allow the headset to connect to a PC with little latency, and you can then run PC-driven content on your Quest 2. Wow. And I actually just spoke about this not too long ago, but you know, when you're able to link remotely to a gaming PC and bring higher powered content to the Quest 2 or to whatever the device is, you know, you really kind of unlock a lot more opportunity to bring this technology to places, because, you know, for training officers or whatever the case is right now, if you want to have a realistic experience, you're lugging a bunch of tower PCs on location. You're bringing cables, you're bringing headsets, you're bringing these sensors mounted on the walls, and it's not the easiest thing to transport. But once you've got really fast internet that allows you to make those connections reliably, then you can really just bring the wireless headset on location and a router, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I can't wait for that to be the case, because making my life a lot easier.
Yeah, right.
But we've seen a movement of broadband, like getting deeper and deeper into underserved areas. I mean, we have a local company that's putting fiber to the home now, and they're launching that product this month. And so there you go, more bandwidth at the house.
Yeah.
Well, the latest Ohio, budget that was just passed has millions of dollars in it for broadband expansion. I mean, we're actually very fortunate that we have a company that has invested into that technology. But the more that it gets out into further and deeper into southern Ohio, southeastern Ohio particularly, I think the more opportunity we may have for even more VR arcades in places like Gallipolis and Jackson and things like that. Have you thought about expansion and things like that?
We have. Actually, we're if all goes well, we're going to have a location in Bakersfield, California in a few months.
Wow.
We've been in talks.
That was the natural progression, Chillicothe, Bakersfield, then the world.
Sense,
That's right.
No, we through the design studio, we started to have some revenue come in, and we hired a marketing person on full time now, and kind of her goal was to expand the reach of our VR arcade, and through the contracts that I've drawn up with these different content providers, we're allotted a 50-mile exclusivity, so it kind of behooves us to get out there first, and put that stake in. So we built out our website to show that we are offering, franchising as an option now.
Wow.
And so far we've had 2 serious people interested, one in Bakersfield, and the other one is in the Austin, Texas area.
Wow.
So kind of looking forward. I think Austin, Texas will be closer to the end of this year, but the Bakersfield, last I heard, was negotiating the terms of his lease. So we're shooting for August, I think, to head out there and start working on that. So
well, with what you've done in the space in just 2 short years, I think, and then just the work and the planning and the thought that you've obviously put into it, you have a little bit to offer these other people that would then do new franchises, because you've got the experience behind you, whereas they don't, and you can help them maybe learn some of the pitfalls that you maybe experienced outside of COVID, of course, because God knows we don't want to ever go there again.
Right.
But just some of the things that you learned along the way that you can help them avoid.
Well, and it's enticing to somebody who wants to get into the industry, because a lot of what you do as an arcade owner in this industry is you go to these content creators like Ubisoft and all these other people in the industry, and you say, hey, I want to license your software, and they say, okay, who are you? And then they say that's going to be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 upfront, to start this contract. And then, you got to go through the process of having lawyers look at the documents and this and that, and it's months of work, and that's for each individual contract, and so we've done a lot of that work already, and we're constantly doing that work. Like I mentioned, we just finalized a contract with a French company a month ago. So we're always on the lookout for new content, cool new experiences, and so that's what we have to offer. We've already got that work done. We come out, with our contracts in hand and say, here's your fully functional VR arcade. Here's how you run it. Here, just for whatever the fee is to get it set up, and you're good to go. And the VR industry and arcade industry is a really cool space to be in, because there's all this innovation all the time. And then, unlike retail, you don't have this overhead, this revolving stock that you have to keep track of. Once you have that upfront expense of the PCs and the hardware, it's really all kind of profit from there. So
yeah.
So what's the, like, in house right now? What's what's the most popular game that you see people gravitating towards?
The Ubisoft escape games, particularly Beyond Medusa's Gate, is still, I think, the most popular thing we have.
Okay.
That one's based off of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Super cool experience. You know, you're in Medusa's lair, trying to figure out how to get out of Medusa's lair, and we've had people travel. Just this past weekend, we had people from Indiana. We had a couple from Michigan. Cleveland, Cincinnati regularly. We have people traveling. We've had people as far away as, California. Matter of fact, we've had people from all over the country come because we're one of 3 or 4 people in the U.S. that are doing it right now. So,
wow.
And it's here
And
in
it's here,
Chillicothe.
Chillicothe.
You know that the great thing about this is, and what we've been able to do, even with the podcast, is to just introduce people to things that they don't know about in their backyard.
Yeah.
Bridge Street is everybody's backyard, right? So
Right.
I think, it's just really awesome to see the progression that you've had in just a couple short years. And then just to hear your passion for not only creating the space that you've created, and then not only just thinking about it as one little space at one little time. Like, it can be a bigger space that has the studio in it and can franchise and do VR classrooms. I think it's just a great testament to you just having a great big vision that, I don't know that you would have thought 2 years ago that you were hiring designers and story writers and
right.
But at the same time, here we are, so that's a great testament to the way that you've launched the business and continue to try to grow it,
Yeah, it's been, my wife and I talk about it all the time. We look at, how Facebook shows your stories from years before, and we'll look at it and we'll say, I can't believe, because we had the picture pop up of when we were painting the walls of the business, and we're like, that was just a couple years ago, and now here we are.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of growth in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Well, I think, with what you're about to do with this app challenge for NASA, I think, that the story continues, and, keep doing what you're doing, because I think, it's obviously working. You're really trying to grow your business in the right way, and I think, more people are going to keep picking up on it. It's one thing to go to a physical escape room and do the game or whatever. When you know that, VR, you can go to one place and play 2 or 3 different games.
Right.
That's, again, another thing that you can do and have fun with. And the more visitors that we get to our area, the more I think you're going to have an opportunity to market you as a great little destination for the gamers in the crowd, or, the VR folks in the crowd. So
Yeah.
we just love what you're doing, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit,
It's so interesting to see how it's just taken off for you.
Appreciate it, yeah. It's not just for gamers, though. We've had 60,
I'm not
70-year-old, non-gamers in there just having a blast. But yeah, it definitely helps if you've played a game or two.
I will say this. I did play the Rocky boxing game one time, and it's amazing how quickly I was out of gas.
Yeah,
That thing is a real deal. And you're fighting against an opponent that is hitting back. And so, it's not like the old video games of old. It's really fun. So, but it'll wear you out pretty quick. But Colin, again, thanks for joining us today, and best of luck to you in the future.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Feels Like Home podcast with Mike Throne and Marty Ford.
A little strange, but I don't feel alone. We just settled in and it already feels like home. Feels like home. Feels like home.